Welcome to the First Buck Podcast, where we feature stories about entrepreneurs and the people who support them. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, and welcome to the First Buck Podcast, brought to you by Sky'sTheLimit.org. We feature stories about entrepreneurs and the people who support them. And today we're joined by Elona Mortimer-Zhika. Elona is a seasoned executive and most recently served as the CEO of Iris Software Group, one of the largest privately held global software businesses valued at over $5 billion. Under her leadership, Iris acquired over 30 businesses, had 2 successful private equity exits. Iris is recognized as a great place to work in the UK, Ireland, USA and Canada, Romania, and India, and more. One of the best places to work for women in tech and wellness. 49% of the workforce at Iris is composed of women. Elona is passionate about education, tech, and diversity. Born in communist Albania, Elona won a scholarship at the age of 16 to attend an international college in Wales, alongside students from over 100 countries. This life-changing experience has driven her to focus on making high social impact and providing opportunities from those from underprivileged and underrepresented backgrounds. Elona is the non-executive director of Boardwave, an exclusive community of Europe's tech CEOs, and a trustee of the HG Foundation, helping underrepresented groups to access high-quality jobs in tech through education and employment programs across the US and Europe. Her prior experience includes several senior leadership roles in PE-backed businesses, the Big Four, as well as non-executive director roles. She graduated first in her class with honors and degree in accounting and economics and is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Her awards are numerous, including CEO of the Year for the UK Tech Awards, 100 Most Influential People in Accounting, Top 50 Women, and more. So we are so excited to have you on the podcast today, an extraordinary role model. Now, we have a question we always need to ask first. How did you earn your first pound, your first buck or euro?
Oh, wow. Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot for that long intro as well. Thank you. So my very, very, very first pound would have been in the UK. I just arrived here. I was at college, and there was an opportunity for me to go on a school trip to Spain. I was learning Spanish as part of my IB, but unfortunately, I couldn't afford the ticket cost to get to Spain, and my parents couldn't afford it either. So we had a cake bake at college, and I sold cakes with my friends, and other friends bought them, and that's how I raised my 200 quid to go and buy my ticket to Spain. And then my first actual paid job, if you like, was when I was a student funding myself through universities at age 18. I worked in retail. Stores. I don't think that exists anymore today. And genuinely, I say this because I think everybody should do a stint on retail. There's nothing that teaches you multitasking and customer service like, being on at the other side of the till, selling during Christmas sales to really stressed out customers. And customer service is important. Every job you do, whether you work for a corporate, whether you open your own business, everything evolves around your customers. So doing a customer service job in retail is a great stint, I think.
That is amazing. I love this story. So you want to go on an international trip, you have a desire to do something, but you need some money. And so you use the resources around you, you get some co-founders, you get some inventory, you put in some sweat equity, and you bake some goods, and then you sell them for a profit to go on this trip. That is a very cool story, and I think it's a great way to learn a little bit about what one would need to practice to basically go into any kind of business. And then your point around retail is so good. I worked as what's called a shoe dog. So someone that went to go collect the shoes from the back and then bring them back to a customer that was obviously wanting different size shoes, and their left foot was bigger than their right foot and all these things. But I couldn't agree with you more that customer service ultimately at the end of the day is so critical for every business, and it's one of the usually areas that many businesses sort of try to ignore. As they get bigger, they go, well, how do we offshore this, or how do we spend less money dealing with our customers? And it's kind of crazy because customers are really the most important aspect of the business, is keeping your customers happy and treating them like royalty, turning them into fans of yours and more. And so I'm so glad you shared that with us, because I don't think any job in retail should ever be looked down on. And one of the first questions I always love to ask anyone I've worked with and continue to ask is, when was the last time you had a delightful customer service experience? And because those memories, those moments bind you to a brand or to a service or to an airline or a hotel or whatever it is. And so very
100.
important lessons.
100.
Okay, so you go to college. Talk to us a little bit about what the next steps are for you. We want to hear about your career and maybe some pivotal moments that helped you evolve and grow into increasing amounts of responsibility.
So born in Albania, as you said on the intro, very different childhood to my friends here today. Communist country, completely closed off from the rest of the world. No one allowed in or out. Didn't speak any English. And then I was very lucky to win a scholarship at the age of 15, 16 to come to the UK to go to an international college. So first time on a plane, came here with $100, which was the most my parents could afford. Bear in mind that they were highly educated, but their salary was about $10 a month. So,
Wow.
The disparity between the cost of living in the UK and Albania was absolutely massive. And the scholarship that I earned was many, many thousands of pounds. There wasn't enough zeros in Albanian lek for my parents to comprehend what a great opportunity this was. But it was so difficult. Their little girl was going away. I have no idea where I was going. I didn't speak the language. I've never met anybody that was an Albanian. I still look back and think, how the hell did they let me go? But I did come, and it was an amazing experience, the most challenging thing I've done, but the most amazing opportunity given to me. I went to a college with like-minded kids, all age 15, 16, young enough to be molded, old enough to know your mind, all there on the basis of meritocracy. And those that could afford to pay would pay, and those that couldn't afford to pay would be on a scholarship. And they came from over 100 different countries. So that was, for me, I would say, the biggest thing that happened, the biggest opportunity, the biggest door opening that happened to me in my life. And what that taught me was a lot around things like resilience, collaboration, the power of diversity, and most importantly, how much better it was to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow, that's how you stay curious. And I say this because that's then, built the foundations for the person that I became later on. I went and did accounting and economics. I was lucky enough to get another scholarship for that because again, my parents couldn't afford it. And then I joined the Big Four, and I wanted to join the best at the time. I went down the more traditional education route, I guess, than some other people. But I wanted to surround myself with the smartest people that I could learn from. And education was something I valued. I sought out a graduate program with Arthur Andersen at the time, and then Deloitte, to do my chartered accountancy. I was always going to be an accountant, by the way. So that was, my dad had taught me being an accountant is great. I was going to follow in his footsteps. But I wanted to do it with a great organization that was going to invest in my training and in my development. So my career is really in 3 phases, I'd say. So phase 1 is Big Four. You're taught a lot around different businesses. You go and audit businesses, you do corporate finance, you realize 80% of every business is the same. It doesn't really matter what industry you're at, what size you're at, the challenges are very similar. The size of those challenges might be different, but the challenges are very similar. And then my second phase, I moved out of Big Four and went and worked for a client and was PE-backed. So I did various roles in finance and worked for different PE houses and learned a lot about growth and cost cutting and restructuring and transformation and financing. And then I spent about 8 years there. And then my third phase was at Iris. I spent almost 9 years at Iris. I started as CFO, then COO, then CEO. I was CEO for 5.5 years. And that's sort of the most executive leadership exposure that I have had. And in that time, Iris went from 500 people to 4,000 people and quadrupled in size, bought over 30 businesses, moved internationally, transitioned to the cloud, and most importantly, as you mentioned at the start, transformed to a great culture. Because for me, when you peel it all back, it's all about people. You've got to look after your people. You've got to surround yourself with the right people. Those people are going to be the ones that look after your customers. They're going to be the ones that build you the product. They're going to be the ones that make you successful. So creating an amazing culture, and what that means is not an easy culture, but a high performing culture where people bring themselves to the table, and a diverse culture, I think, is really critical to any business success. So today, as you mentioned, Iris is a great place to work in every geography we're at, which I was, really, really proud of.
Well, I love to usually ask this question, which is like, what was the, most important investment you ever made in yourself? And I think for you, clearly, like in education, the compounding effect of that and sort of the leverage it created in your careers is amazing. So going to school, pursuing a path in accounting and economics, going into the Big Four, then your first phase is, learning about this sort of structure of business and getting really almost like a PhD in all the componentry of it. Then going into the PE backside, working with clients on growth, and then dealing with the difficult things that happen in businesses where sometimes you have to pivot and cost cut, and that has, serious consequences to what, people are able to do with their businesses. And then three, taking on this role and then elevating within an already pretty established business from CFO to COO to CEO. I want to hear a little bit about, maybe the distinctions between some of those roles. So if you could share with us a little bit, in a big company, sometimes those have very different sort of roles and responsibilities. So, what maybe it'd be interesting to hear, like, what in each one of those things prepared you ultimately for the chief executive function, and what did you feel like you had to learn in each step in order to get to that final step?
Yeah, absolutely. So CFO, honestly, that's what I was trained to do. I look at my background, and to the point that you made, education was the way that I invested in myself. And look, Albania was a really poor country when I was growing up. Beautiful country. I had a lovely childhood, but everybody was really poor. So I studied by candlelight, because when you have nothing, then education is a way that you can make your world bigger. Reading about things, learning things, that's how you can differentiate yourself. So I'm a massive supporter in investing in yourself. And then when I bring that forward, as I said, most of my life was, around finance. That's what I was trained to do. If anybody had asked me, what do you want to be one day? I would say I'd be so lucky if I can be a CFO, and I want to be the best CFO I can ever be. And the one thing that I always say to people when they talk about their long-term plans, I always say, have a plan, but really keep an eye out on what's happening today. Be the best at the job that you are currently doing. Don't worry about somebody else's grass or whatever. Make sure your grass is the greenest grass it can be, because when you excel at what you're currently doing and you love what you do, then those extra opportunities are going to come. Nobody's going to give you the next job and the next job if you're not, if you're mediocre at the job that you're currently doing. So focus on what you're doing. So I remember joining Iris and saying to my CEO at the time, Kevin, I was 36, I think, when I joined. By the time I'm 40, I want to be the best CFO that has ever lived. And by the time I was 40, I'd become a COO and a CEO. And I think I got that partly because I worked hard. I mean, you've got to work hard. Like, the working hard bit is the basic minimum. Like, there is no job that doesn't require you to work hard. And you've got to be passionate about it too, as well. It's a two-way thing. You get what you give. But mostly also, I think, because I was lucky enough to be surrounded by people that saw my potential, that weren't scared of the fact that I didn't have this experience, but I had ability to do whatever came my way. And that's why I always hire for competency and for skill and for attitude rather than experience. There are some jobs that you need experience for. And of course, the more experience you have, the better you become. But even then, you've got to make sure that you have the right mindset with it all, that you maintain a growth mindset, that you continue to learn, that you stay curious, because there are a lot of people that think that they're the finished product because they have done a job for so long. That's it. They've stopped learning. And there's nothing I can do with somebody that stopped learning, because the world around us changes so fast that we're out of date already anyway. So I think hiring for competency, for skill, for attitude is really, really important. So I was lucky enough to be surrounded by bosses and investors. HG Capital own Iris. They've owned Iris for 20 years on and off. They're amazing growth mindset investors, and they saw something in me and gave me the opportunity that, and let's face it, on paper, that would be a million people that would be more qualified than me to do the job. But they trusted my hard work and my intellect and my go-get attitude and my resilience and my curiosity and my passion for the business to get it done. And you asked what's the biggest difference. So CFO, I think I was trained to do that job. What that means is the people around you that you hire in your team come from a similar background in terms of financial acumen. Obviously, their worlds are different, but they've come from similar training. More or less, you have done their jobs, maybe not in the detail that they're doing them, but throughout my career, I would have been in their shoes. So what that means is if there is ever a problem, you can go and get yourself out of that hole because you know what you're doing. You're trained for this. You understand exactly what the issue is, and you can go and support them and help them, and you can fix it. You're trained to do that. When you become, in my case, I was COO first and CEO. As COO, I owned everything in terms, so I had people, M&A integration, all customer services, so customer service, professional services, all customer-facing roles. You are fundamentally then a leader of leaders. You are no longer an expert in that field because you are always going to have a bias. My bias was always going to be numbers, and it's going to be people
Right.
because I'm passionate about people, right? But realistically speaking, when I spoke to an engineer, they could put wool over my eyes if they wanted to, because that was my area of expertise. So then as a leader, you need to learn a different skill. And that skill is that you need to know enough about the subject so that, you can be dangerous and nobody can pull wool over your eyes. But it becomes even more important than before to surround yourself with amazing people that you trust, that are experts in their field. Because if something goes wrong, you cannot code overnight. You can't get yourself out of a hole. You're only as good as your team. So I always think at that level, you're a football manager. You don't need to know how to play football. I mean, you need to know the rules of the game. And the most important thing is you need to know that you have the right player in the right place, working as a team. And then you've got to have a bench of players for when the others get tired, for succession planning. That's when you have your subs. So I think that's a different skill because you feel a little bit, it's scary, right? Because you're relying on somebody else at that point in time. But it's also so great for learning when you find that great team that you trust and a team that complement each other. Because one thing that I learned probably too late, if I'm honest, is that you should always play to your strength. I spent most of my life worrying about the things that I didn't know. And if you think about the way our education system works or our appraisal systems work, you go in, you get appraised, and people give you your areas for development. And these are the things that you need to work on. And look, they're really important, but I think they're important in the context of awareness, being self-aware of what you can and what you can't do, and how much more you need to learn that's, required for the role that you do. But I fundamentally believe if you got to a certain age and you are not good at something, there is a reason you're not good at it. Maybe it's not your natural talent. Maybe you just don't have a passion for it, whatever it is. So my view of the world is if you focus on that thing you're not good at, regardless how hard you try, you're only going to still be average at it. You're going to be mediocre. You're going to be a 7 or best an 8 out of 10. So why do that? Why not instead go and focus on the thing you're a 10 out of 10 on, and then hire people that complement you where you have gaps so that they can operate at their 10 out of 10. And then you've got a team that is operating in their strengths. So I would say that leadership becomes the more important as the higher up you go, and you are no longer, as I said, the expert at the role that you're doing, because then you are leading a team of experts.
I think there's a lot of humility and wisdom in those words. I want to come back to something that you said earlier that I think will resonate with so many younger people that are trying to find their way to the world today and into business. And you talked about, someone that gave you your first chance or saw your potential. How do you go about, sort of working on what I almost describe as like social capital with your team, helping them find their confidence, giving them, opportunities and then coaching them through, areas of improvement. And I think one of the things young people struggle with, and I had this problem when I was younger too, is I took all kinds of criticism like some sort of personal affront. And just like you said, you got to focus on your strengths. You need to be aware of your blind spots. How do you sort of navigate that with the teams that you've hired and the people you've worked with in the past, with a special emphasis sort of having a view on younger people today, and thinking about that?
So there's two sort of questions, if you like, that I ask everybody that I hire. One of them is their level of curiosity. And it's because I think what it boils down to is how curious people are. Because curious people are always going to find another and another. And it's like their brain works like a decision tree. The moment an answer is given to a question, then that like sprouts three more branches and three more questions. And that's what I love. I love people that are curious, because curiosity is going to solve a lot of things. It's going to make you more innovative. You're going to be hardworking. You're going to get to the answer. So I always ask for that. It's interesting because in my career, I've had people come back and say, oh, no. Because I work in finance, I shouldn't be curious because there's a lot of confidential information in finance. And so you shouldn't ask questions. And I was like, curiosity is not being nosy. No, but I'm not asking you to be nosy and ask for things that don't, that are not your area of what you need to know about. Curiosity is going, so what? Thank you for that answer. What about now? So what more can I do? So I think that's really important. So if you have a curious team or if you have a curious manager, they are going to breed those skills within the teams of people that they are responsible for. So I think that's really key. And the other thing that I ask everybody is how many people, particularly I guess people that are more in a managerial positions, that at manager level now, how many people do you work with today that you've worked with in the past?
Yeah.
And if the answer is none, then I have an issue with that,
Red
because
flag. Yeah.
the village. I think it takes a village for all of us to get to where we are. None of us can get here on our own. As I said earlier, you've got your area of strength and you've got your bias. And then you've got to surround yourself with amazing people, the smartest people you can find, the most hardworking people you can learn from. And so if you haven't built great teams that want to follow you or that you want to poach, people don't want to work for you anymore, then that's a red flag to me.
Yeah,
So
I have questions. Yeah, that's a great one.
yes, that's how I think. So and that is really, if you are somebody that's starting your career and you're being interviewed for a job, then ask your manager how many people are in that team, or how many people that person is working with today that they've worked with before, because that will tell you about that person and how invested are they in your personal development and your growth over time. Because let's face it, that personal network is how most of us find the best talent, because we've seen people at their lows and we've seen people at their highs, because in an interview you put the best version of yourself forward, your manager puts their best version of themselves forward, so you don't get the reality. It doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. One day you're going to be tired, one day you're going to be upset about something. You've got to be able to be yourself, and you've got to be able to feel comfortable that you're not faking it for 8 hours a day or longer. So I think that asking the other person how much investment do they make in their team and how many people do they work with that they've worked with before will tell you a lot.
Yeah, that is very, very good. So I love it from I ask a similar one, which is, who have you worked with that you would enthusiastically work with again, which is sort of getting at the same thing. Like, are you taking people along the journey with you?
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have a tribe, and what's your, and it sort of talks to how they motivate groups and take care of their team and, encourage curiosity and reward merit, but, also support people that have, made honest mistakes and have a high performing team that's accountable. The other one though, I love this flipping the script though, is as you're an interview, if you're being interviewed for a job, you can ask the interviewing manager, this exact question. And I think it can tell you a lot about a company's culture and specifically the manager. And I don't know how many young people I've spoken to in the past, but sometimes it's almost better to work for a manager that sees your potential than it is to work in the specific career or even industry you thought would be the one you wanted to work with, because those types of personalities are going to get you to perform at your highest level. Just like a coach or a manager for a great football club can get the most out of the players they really understand their circumstances from. The rest of it, works out and it builds a better team. So I love that.
And I also think nobody, like I've not encountered anybody that gives a chance to somebody or lies about seeing a potential in someone. Like I wouldn't bring somebody within my business that I didn't think could do the job because they become a reflection of me. So I would endorse them because I can see that spark. So the opposite is also true. They have to say yes at that point in time. The amount of people that are given an opportunity and they just go, I don't know if I can do it. It's not for me. I don't want to let you down. It's like, say yes. Nobody is really doing you a favor. What they see in you, they genuinely see in you. So say yes and then live on that like discomfort zone, because there was no success that came out of comfort zone, let's face it.
Yep.
And figure out afterwards, like we're all winging it at some point in time. Loads of us are winging a part of what we do, but unless you're in it, you're not going to learn. Saying no, you've called it out. You have absolutely concluded on the fact that you're not going to learn. So I would say if somebody believes in you, then grab that with both hands and work really, really hard to make them proud and make yourself proud. Do not say no. You can do anything you want to do if somebody believes
Don't
in
sabotage yourself. I think that's the headline. So I'd love to hear, you seem to have this great care for building teams and taking care of companies in this culture that you've described, and it's clearly, manifested itself in the accolades and the business success. Just looking back, in time a little bit, like who for you was a really important role model or mentor, and what did you take from them, and how did you apply it in your career, and how are you passing that down to the next generation?
So my biggest role model, probably a bit of cliche, but genuinely it was my dad. I lost my dad 7 years ago. So,
Sorry.
and he's still my light today. So I still, today, every time I do, everything I do, I say, I hope you're proud. I hope I've made you proud.
I'd say
And
so.
he was my role model because he was the most curious person I knew. He was very smart. He loved, he taught me my love for maths. My earliest memories are me and him walking to our grandma's house every day when we'd go and see her, and he'd give me a little puzzle to do from like the age of 2 or 3. But really, it was because he was the most curious person. And I think it goes back down to that thirst for learning. We as humans are responsible for our own path and how we develop. Don't go into a business and talk to them about, oh, you don't do enough to train me, or what do you do about staff development? I think that's an important question. But then the other person might ask you, when was the last time you invested in yourself? There's a lot of free courses online. When did you go and do that? So, and I think that go-get attitude, that thing that's built within us to do better, I think that's important. And he had that. And I remember he was in his 70s, didn't speak a word of English, and he'd still take my books, my English books, my economics books, and read them, and then go like, what does it mean? And I'm like, Dad, I'm not being funny. I'm in the middle of something. You don't speak. Why are you reading?
It's audit season. I can't answer that question right now.
It wasn't anything he didn't want to learn. And so for me, I think that, that drives me a lot in life, to never settle for the bar. Like whatever you reach your bar, then find something else that excites you. But generally, I would say I've been very lucky with all of my bosses. And my bosses have been my best mentors, and I've tried to choose well. I've tried to choose people that I could learn from. And I've been lucky as well, because most of my job, well, every job I have, if I'm honest, I joke that I've never really interviewed, has come to me as an opportunity from the network. Because what happens is when you work hard, the right people will spot that you've worked hard, and those people are going to take you under their wing. And they're going to make sure, if they're not selfish, because sometimes your managers might be selfish because it suits them to have you in their team. But I find on the whole, most people are not. Most people can see your potential, and they will talk about you in the kitchen or wherever about something. An opportunity will come, and that will give you another area of growth. Whilst I've only had, I think, 3 phases in my career, as I said, I'm promoted every 2 to 3 years, every time, because somebody saw that potential. So I think, I think that's really important, that you have a role model or a mentor at work where you are, because they can speak up half and you can learn from them. And my bosses have been that. And then I say is I've gone and sought out specifically, this is just my situation, for role models that were mums, working mums. Yep. Now, different people have different things. Some people might have, they might be marathon players, so they want to learn from somebody that's got the same hobbies as them. Some people might be looking after an elderly person. We all have other things in our life outside of work that we might want to focus on. So find the person whose life is the most similar to you. Don't find a role model that's on a pedestal. There are many, many successful people out there, but they're not within reach. They're not relatable. We're not going to be them. But you can be the person that's 3-4 years ahead of you. And that I found has been the most help for me, because they could give me actual advice, practical advice about how do you cope with, dropping your kids off and being in London at 9 a.m. and you know what I mean? And
yeah, the practical stuff. Yeah.
A role model has got to be somebody that's relatable, somebody that's, trodden on your path or had some of the challenges you're having, so they can give you those practical tips, rather than, some celebrity or personality that we can't relate to.
Yeah, I think there's this unfortunate desire to follow these attention-seeking role models, whether they're celebrities or influencers, and a lot of these people, they really do not have circumstances or anything at all similar to the ones that most people have in their real life, and so it's a real trap to look at those and think that that's the path. So I think that's really, really good advice, although it might be hard for some people to hear. So I wanted to ask you a couple last questions, and then we'll get to the end of this. But a lot of young people find entering the workforce or pursuing entrepreneurship to be really scary, whether it's taking that risk and maybe investing in themselves through higher education and taking burdensome loans, or navigating early jobs and doing things they maybe didn't anticipate they'd have to do, whether that's working in retail or something else. So what advice can you give our young listeners that are sort of getting started to manage this world of risk and opportunity that's in front of them, and how to handle some of the stress that comes with it?
Really, really good question. For me, I think about it in 2 buckets, the what and the how. And they're 2 different things. The what, I think, is you've got to find something that you're passionate about. Make your world big. Go and do lots of different things until you find the thing that resonates with you. And it doesn't matter what that thing is, but how much easier it is to do a job in something you have a natural passion for, because those are going to be the things that make you really good at it. And it's going to make you also feel you're not really working 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day. I always joke that I haven't worked a day in my life because I've loved what I was doing. Don't get me wrong. I've had hard days, the lows have been low, the highs have been high. But when you love what you do, it makes a massive, massive difference. So find something that you're passionate about. And if you don't find that, keep trying. It doesn't matter. You're so young. You are so young. So, don't stay in a job that you are not fulfilled in. Go and find the other thing and the other thing, because this is the time to find that thing that ticks with you. I think that if you've got your own business and you want to open your own business, then there are things in the what that you need to think about around. Make sure that it is a real business. It's not something that you think is a great idea. It's you've got to ask yourself, an outside party would, what's the problem that you're trying to fix? Who is moaning about this thing? Who's going to go, oh yes, if only I had that would solve my problem. So think about the customer. Back to what we said at the start of the podcast, how every business is around the customer. You've got to understand your market, and you've got to really understand the problem you're fixing and why you're fixing it better than somebody else in the market, because there's a lot of competition already. Why are you going to be better? Why are they going to come to you? And then you're going to need to do a detailed business plan for that, and my view of the world is you need to go, I've got a base plan, I've got a realistic plan, I've got an optimistic plan, and you've got to think of those because things don't go the way that you want them to go, and your ambition has got to be sort of mapped with realism as well. And you've got to confront that truth, and you've got to figure out your funding as well, because that's really tricky. Now, most people might have some money themselves, friends and family is, outside of bootstrapping, friends and family could be a good way to get some money. You might have a government grant, depending on what it is that you are going for, crowdfunding, angel investors, VCs. My view of it is try and stay away from giving anybody equity in your business unless they are going to add value to it. Don't give equity for just money. You can find money. There are cheaper ways of finding money than giving half of your business away. But give equity if the person is bringing something to the table, because they're going to make your business that you have a vision for that will get to 10 million, they're going to turn it into 20 million because they're bringing something to the table. So then it's okay that you gave some away. So I think those are the things for me that are the sort of the what, the things you need to think of. Because obviously getting a job in a corporate, it's a lot safer. It's not as exhilarating if you want to be an entrepreneur, but it's a lot safer. You go in, you apply. If you don't like it, you apply somewhere else. But if you want to open your own business, you need to think about these things. The how, I think, is the most important thing, because it's pretty lonely, and you've got to make sure that you do not worry about failing, because to me, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a critical part of success. Failure is how we learn. As long as you're failing fast, you're learning from it, and then you get up and you go again. Don't fail twice on the same thing. You can't panic about the unknown. I think it can be quite exhilarating, and just accept it, that there's going to be a lot of unknowns out there, and be like the dove, calm on the outside, inside thinking, what the hell am I doing? And wing it a bit, like I said. But the only way that you can fix the unknown is if you do it and you get to know more and you move forward and you discover it. So you can't worry about it. You've just got to start taking action, because paralysis by analysis is not what you want. I always say, this is probably the third thing, a bad decision is better than no decision. You cannot stand still. Just make a decision anyway, because in most of our lives, most of the businesses, nobody that's going to die. You're not a surgeon with a patient on the operating table. At that point in time, make sure that you've got experts around you. Otherwise, just go for it. And then you'll figure out if the unknown was a rubbish decision, which you're going to learn from, so it doesn't matter, or if it was the best idea that you ever had. So I think that need for action is really important. Control the controllables. I think that's a good advice that somebody gave me a long time ago. There's a lot of things that are going to come your way. The market's the market, financial crisis, customers might have better, whatever it is. But at any point in time, you can control certain things, and being in control is important. You control who you hire. You control how you go about your roadmap. You control the way that you treat your customers. So control the controllables, and don't let the noise of everything else get to you, because you've got to be focused on execution. Got to believe in yourself. I find that the biggest advantage of the underprivileged is that they are born in an environment where they've had to fight, and the resilience that you get from that, the out-of-box thinking, the go-get attitude, that is a privilege that the privileged don't have. So use that. Remember the days when, every time I have a bad day, I keep thinking, God, I didn't study by candlelight to come here and be told no by this person. I'm not going to listen to the no. I need to go and find the yes. So find that hunger within you that, most of us who haven't had the privileged upbringing have, and use that to your advantage, and believe in yourself. And then surround yourself with amazing people, whether it's your team, but also a network of advisors, mentors. It takes a village for all of us. Nobody got to the top completely on their own. So make sure that you work on that network. You listen to people, you take their advice. Most people, I've noticed, they love to be asked for advice. because you are stroking their ego. So go and ask them, whoever you have met in your life, you approach them and you go, I've got, I'd like to ask you about, and that they will part their wisdom because you're giving them a huge compliment, and people love to give back and pay it forward. So I think that's a must do. And the last thing is make some time for you. I think it's important that in today's world with so much stress that we invest in our well-being and in our body as well, and whether that's meditation, whether that's a language you want to, something that takes you away from the day thing, because it's a lot worrying about something 24/7. And like a computer, at the start of this call, we had to turn off our laptops because it didn't work, did it? And then
That's right.
Worked again. And sometimes your body needs a switch off. So make that time for you.
Well, I'm not sure I've ever taken as many notes in a podcast, which is a good one. So I have so many things I've tried to circle here. We've seen phase 1, 2, and 3 for you. I think we'll eagerly anticipate whatever phase 4 is, and I look forward to watching that journey and be a supporter of whatever you end up going into next. So I had a few things I summarized here, and I'm going to try and do it quickly, but. From an extraordinary beginning, having been born in communist Albania before the political transitions, heading to England with $100 in your pocket to go forge a new life of discovery, investing in education, which is something you've taken through your whole career with you, embracing a curious personality and encouraging others to be curious as well, building a culture around that. That's high performance, among other things. And there are so many great pieces of advice in here around focusing on your relationships, and then also dealing with the realities of the world. It's not always going to be easy, but you have to get out there. And sometimes you will have setbacks. There will be challenges. Those challenges are opportunities in your career. And I'm so grateful that you shared all those things with us today. So I'll leave it at that. We have so much to revisit at some point, and hopefully our listeners will have absolutely loved this one. So at skieslimit.org, we connect underestimated entrepreneurs with volunteer professionals for free one-on-one mentoring. We also provide business guides to all our members and monthly funding opportunities. We call it the Friends and Family Fund. They're grants to go right in your pocket so you can practice building your first company, whether it's a food stand to get a business ticket or a ticket to go to your first international conference, or a little bit of money to set up your website or whatever you need. So you can sign up for free today. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe and share. So thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the First Buck podcast. Don't forget to join the community of underrepresented entrepreneurs and their supporters by signing up at skiesthelimit.org. Click subscribe, and we'll see you next time.